дворце съездов, где продолжает работу 20-й съезд ВЛКСМ.
I have an especially rewarding dream in which I am a celebrated Komsomol delegate giving a triumphant speech at the 20th Congress of the VLKSM in Moscow. My performance is later televised, and as I watch this footage of myself, I masturbate stealthily, despite being surrounded by a large gathering of people, all crammed into my parents' sitting room. I'm on the sofa, and my left hand is jammed between my thighs, beneath my skirt, and I'm rubbing myself through my underwear. My fingers are bringing me ever closer to orgasm. Nobody notices what I am doing. It is extremely exciting. Comrades, I am immensely proud to have the honor and the privilege of representing the Rostov students at the 20th Congress of the VLKSM, almost 70 years since the Great October Revolution of 1917. Moreover, it is my extreme pleasure to address both Komsomol members representing the whole country here in the Kremlin Palace of Congresses, and esteemed members of the Politburo of the Central Committee of the CPSU. After graduating from elementary school in 1984, I entered the Rostov School of Music. I remember with gratitude each one of my teachers, who imbued me with a thirst for knowledge, and furthermore, did their utmost to foster a responsible attitude to learning. For me, the Rostov School of Music has revolutionized my life, not only thanks to the marvelous instruction I received there from so many brilliant teachers, but also to the communist youth movement. You have no idea how much I hate you. I'll never succumb to your grim nostalgia. Our dream, going up in interstellar flames. They look out for me, hands in pockets, swaying as they walk. Who knows? How can he not see it? The initial punch he threw, aimed at my face, landed on the side of my head, narrowly missing my temple, but unfortunately clipping a portion of my right ear. The fist of a man 3 times my height sufficed to knock me sideways, my legs buckling. I grazed my palms against the ground as I reflexively broke my fall, the skirt of my dress riding up to expose my underwear. The shock of being upended left me speechless. Comrades, for me, it's a dream come true. And it is definitive and absolute proof that a great deal can be achieved with our work in the youth and labour movement throughout the Soviet Union. We are in the vanguard. Our homeland is rightly considered to be an international authority and an example to the people of the world. No important decision at the international youth level can be taken without the participation and consent of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Therefore, all of us here, no matter how big or small our contribution, are representatives of an immense and extremely wise global power, following in the footsteps of the great Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, in the spirit of revolutionary action and justice. only fools believe. Uncle's on the prowl, the luxury of living incognito. The perfect scene. He grabs me by my wrists as I attempt to escape, and I teeter, dangling there. His fingers and thumbs enclose my wrists like he wants to snap them, and I struggle and kick, but this amuses him, and he lets me hang there, lifts me off the ground until I'm standing on tiptoes, and as he shakes me and I rattle around like a puppet, he seizes me by the shoulders or grips my throat with his right hand until I begin to choke, my breathing stifled. In one movement, he forces me to the ground. Blades of grass brush against my face. He pulls my long hair out of its ponytails, tears at it until I cry out in pain. Then he punches me in the mouth, splitting my upper lip. My teeth are coated in my own blood. I can taste metal. He's kneeling astride me, pinning my thighs to the moist earth. And as my arms flail about uselessly, he swats them away. He laughs at my helplessness, drinks it in, grins to himself, grunts in satisfaction, his stubble showing, his jaw pressing against my face, scratching my skin. Still he laughs, as though it's the greatest feeling in the world to overpower a juvenile with careless ease. The trees are spinning. He begins to touch me as he sticks his fingers inside my underwear and begins to fiddle with me, pinching and rubbing at my genitalia with his filthy fingertips. He grabs my hair with his other hand and uses it to alternately pull, then slam the back of my head into the ground. Perseus wore a magic cap, that the monsters he hunted down might not see him. We draw the magic cap down over our eyes and ears as a make-believe that there are no monsters. So wrote Karl Marx in the preface to the first edition of his masterpiece, Das Kapital. My esteemed comrades, perverts and pimps, always remember, no good deed should ever go unpunished. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. In the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. Then, which of you gentlemen assembled here is the Cyclops Polyphemus? And what would that make me, your little Galatea? Tell me, do we walk amongst the volcanoes, arm in arm, watching their intermittent eruptions? Does magma spatter and sear my pale torso? Do I lie back and let you experiment melodiously on my pristine zither? Do I kneel and play keenly on your aulos? Or do you bounce me in your lap of luxury, whilst zephyrs caress an array of Aeolian harps? Or are these Elysian fields through which we wander, my hand enclosed by your hairy fist? In which case, whom amongst you will be my rampant Rhadamanthes, the first to ravage me there in the long, singing grass? Who am I? And what gives me the right, you may ask, to stand before you in the roseate blush of youth? It was you who made me this way. Galatea was a nereid, a sea nymph, the self-absorbed object of the Cyclops Polyphemus's affections. Polyphemus, his name means abounding in songs and legends, appeared as a savage, man-eating giant in the 9th book of Homer's Odyssey. In the satyr play of Euripides, Polyphemus is made a pederast for comic effect. Sound familiar? Even Galatea, it's true, wheeled her brine-wet horses, Polyphemus, to your songs, writes the Latin poet Propertius. Comrades, surely it is not such a stretch, a quantum leap of the imagination, to picture one-eyed Polyphemus showcasing his mastery of the Syrinx on the shores of our Black Sea, whilst his Galatea, a veritable Rusalka, in the typical drowned odalisque role, trails her twin braids through the glittering surf. Oh, Galatea, whose name incidentally means she who is milk white, is also the moniker popularly given to that statue of carved ivory by Pygmalion of Cyprus, which then came to life. You transfixed me, turned me to stone, rendered me lifeless as marble. Frozen in this way, entire eons passed me by in an Augenblick. Your latent agalmatophilia breaks through the surface of your consciousness, the tip of a vast iceberg rearing its apex above the surface of the Arctic Sea. Immense waves crashing thunderously to herald your obsession's treasured appearance. Oh, my dear comrades, strum a few chords on your balalaikas in memory of me, and cherish my inevitable and premature death as your fingers fret long and fitfully. Then he gropes at my ribs, my torso, my breasts. I gasp and cry out in shame as much as fear. Then something snaps. I begin to wail like a siren in a series of long, piercing shrieks. My screams ring out around the forest, but he punches me in the face, fracturing my nose. I feel the cartilage and bone crunch unpleasantly as I'm overwhelmed by despair and panic. As blood oozes from my nostrils and tears stream from my eyes, he scoops up a mound of loose soil with his fingers and palm and shoves it into my open mouth. I taste blood and dirt. Fistfuls of soil rain down upon my face as my assailant laughs in unbridled mirth, soaking up my bewilderment and distress. I begin to suffocate, unable to cry out, choking on dirt. He produces a knife, using the blade to cut away my pinafore apron, worn every day over my school dress. Then he tears at the lace of my collar, pulling my dress apart, and he reveals my flesh. My nostrils are filled with blood. My nerves are pulsating. My heart races. He raises his knife and plunges it into my breast. A gaping wound promptly opens up in my chest. Blood gushes from the injury, seeping out across my skin, and my murderer smears it across my shoulders, massages it into my throat as he grips my neck, laughs as he squeezes my cheeks, raises his weapon again and brings it down into my ribs. The pain is burning and intense. It stings and it throbs. It swells up inside me like a river wanting to burst its banks. My muscles spasm in agony. I'm crying and bleeding. And the last thing I'm going to see, before I lose consciousness forever, is not the blue sky or the rustling summer leaves of the trees, but the leering, distorted features of a maniac. His expression half manic grin, half disgusted grimace. I feel so cold now. The thick frames of his glasses like a double set of eyes fixing me in sadistic rage. After I'm dead, he mutilates my body, stabs, cuts and slices at my flesh. He would have kept me alive for longer, no doubt, but he got a little carried away and severed one of my arteries. He treated my corpse like a seafood platter or a forest picnic, greedily tucking into my innards. Fascinated by my vulva, he toyed with it, haphazardly cutting into my labia as though he were performing some kind of botched surgery. He was ravenous, genuinely bloodthirsty. Finally, in a crescendo of joy, he orgasmed, simultaneously stabbing his knife into the ground, and having ejaculated all over my exposed viscera, picked up my school bag and swung it around in circles before letting it fly far away into the bushes. He then meticulously untied me. I guess he wanted to reuse the rope, and then dragged my corpse by the ankles into the undergrowth, concealing it with branches and dead leaves. Let me tell everybody assembled here today, as every fibre of my being trembles and spontaneously combusts in an inferno of rage and agony, I have met Satan, the nightmare, the ripper, the forest killer, whatever you want to call him. I have met him in dreams, on the streets, inside the carriage of a suburban electric train, on lonely forest trails, in the flattened wilderness of the Tiger, on the banks of the Don River, in the sweltering abyss of an endless summer where youth freezes forever in pure terror. And I have encountered him at dusk on a busy street, with his briefcase in hand, his mask of sanity ready to slip the moment we're alone. His crimes are committed with particular cruelty. Vampirism, cannibalism, and necrophilia manifesting in their turn. Obsessive and immersed in his own thoughts and fantasies. Satan worked out in his mind a clear methodology for tracking, stalking, and luring victims. A systemic plan of action which he strictly adhered to. We might argue that he was primarily heterosexual. Boys for him served as what we might describe as symbolic objects, onto which he projected and vented his long-repressed rage at the grievances and humiliations suffered in his childhood and adolescence. Furthermore, he was, shall we say, a confirmed necrosadist who needed to watch the torments, agonies, and ultimately deaths of other people in order to obtain sexual satisfaction. The numerous stab wounds he habitually inflicted were a means by which he was able to penetrate those he murdered. The blade thus performed the role of the penis, and the killer often made analogous movements with the knife inside the wound, leading detectives to surmise that Satan was most likely impotent. He was unable to tolerate the gaze of his victims, and therefore he blinded them and kept the body parts he'd cut off as trophies. By amputating the genitals of his young male victims, he was either attempting to make them more like women or expressing fury at his own sexual failures. Interestingly, he was able to temporarily stop killing if he thought he was in danger of being apprehended by the authorities. But realistically speaking, it was obvious that he would never desist from killing unless he was caught, or until the day he died.